Hey folks, Pastor Michael here with an update on the Bible Reading Revolution. We have been doing this as a church, going through the entire New Testament chapter by chapter, one chapter a day, using this green sheet as our guide to read the New Testament. And it's been going really well. I've been hearing lots of positive things. I encourage you to keep up with it. And if you fall off the wagon, to get back on at any time. It doesn't matter when. And pick up where you left off and keep going, or start where we are. It doesn't matter. Just do it. It's really good for you. We are finishing up right now reading Romans, Ephesians, Philippians, three of Paul's letters. Really rich in there. And now, as Christmas approaches, we are moving into the Gospel of Luke. We've already read the Gospel of Mark. Now the Gospel of Luke. And we're starting on Christmas Eve with Luke because Luke starts with the Christmas story. It's a logical place to start. In my home, we have a tradition that before we open any presents on Christmas morning, we're all gathered around and everyone's excited. We just take a moment and we pause and we open up the Word of God and we read the Christmas story. And for us, it just kind of helps us to center our hearts and our minds in the right place and on the right things as we celebrate Christmas together. So I encourage you to do that if you don't already do something along those lines in your home. But it works out perfectly because on December 25th, the reading is from Luke chapter 2, which is the birth of Jesus. So it's perfect. So we encourage you to do that. Now Luke, the Gospel of Luke was written by, you guessed it, Luke. And Luke was a doctor, probably a medical doctor as far as we can tell, so call him Dr. Luke. And Dr. Luke was a friend of the Apostle Paul, and that's part of how he got acquainted with the gospel. He writes his letter, addresses it to a man named Theophilus. We don't know who Theophilus was, but this is who Luke writes his letter, his gospel to, like a letter. And I love Luke's gospel. I think it's my favorite of all of the four Gospels, and there's a couple reasons why I love Luke's Gospel so much. One is because Luke took the time. He's very upfront at the beginning to say, "I took the time and I did my research." Matthew, when he wrote his Gospel, he knew Jesus. He was with Jesus. He was one of the disciples. John, the same thing. Mark and Luke didn't know Jesus personally. So they did the research on these things, and I love that. I love that Luke says, "I did my research. I did my homework." Let me just read actually for you the very beginning of Luke's Gospel, the first 4 verses. This is what he says: "Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us." Other people have sat down and done this too: Matthew, Mark, John. Just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses, like Matthew and John, and ministers of the word, have delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past. I've been following this Jesus story for quite a while, and it seemed good to me also to write an orderly account for you. And he addresses most excellent Theophilus, that you may have certainty concerning the things that you have been taught. He sits down. Luke says, I've heard the other gospel accounts. They're great, and I've been following this story too, and I want to give you my perspective on it. An orderly account, a well-researched, well-studied account. And that's what I love. I just love that about Luke, that he did his homework. Second reason that I love the Gospel of Luke is that one of the major themes that Luke focuses on is the compassion of Jesus. Compassion for the poor, compassion for the sick, all that sort of stuff. It's a huge focus in Luke's Gospel. You can't escape when you read the Gospel of Luke. You can't escape the compassion of Jesus Christ. So that's the Gospel of Luke. I hope you enjoy it. That will take us mid-January. And then halfway through January, or near the end of January, we will start in the book of Acts. And the reason we do Acts after Luke is because Acts was also written by Luke. Luke wrote Luke and Acts, which actually makes him, volume-wise, the biggest contributor to the New Testament, Dr. Luke. And Acts, of course, tells us the story of the first Christians, starts with the ascension of Jesus after his resurrection, and goes right into the story of the first Christians, the establishing of the church, introduces us to the Apostle Paul and his ministry. It's an absolutely wonderful picture of the church and it's an inspiration to us today as to how we are supposed to live out our faith. So that's Luke and Acts. That's coming up next in the Bible Reading Revolution. I really hope that you are reading and enjoying it, and remember to share on Facebook with the hashtag Bible Reading, and we will all be encouraged by what you're being encouraged by too. God bless you, and Merry Christmas.